The sun had just dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple over the small town of Maplewood. The air was cool, carrying with it the faint smell of pine trees that surrounded the area. Jack Taylor stood in his backyard, a pair of binoculars pressed to his eyes. He loved stargazing, even though he wasn't an expert or anything close to it. To him, the night sky was a mystery waiting to be unraveled, a puzzle that no one could ever fully solve. Jack adjusted the focus on the binoculars, scanning the heavens for something unusual. He didn't expect to find anything special tonight. Most nights, all he saw were stars and the occasional plane blinking its way across the sky. But tonight felt different. There was a strange energy in the air, a quiet hum that seemed to resonate deep within him. As he shifted his gaze toward the distant hills outside of town, he froze. Something wasn't right. High above the tree line, hovering silently, was a soft green light. It pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat, casting faint shadows on the ground below. At first, Jack thought it might be some kind of drone or maybe even a weather balloon reflecting the moonlight. But as he watched, the light began to move, not quickly but steadily descending toward the earth. His heart raced as realization dawned. This was no ordinary object. Without wasting another second, Jack ran inside to grab his old telescope. It wasn't fancy, but it would do the job. Setting it up hastily in his yard, he trained the lens on the glowing orb. What he saw made his breath catch in his throat. The object wasn't just a ball of light. It had shape and structure. It looked like a sleek metallic craft, smooth and otherworldly, with patterns etched along its surface that shimmered faintly. This wasn't human-made, not by a long shot. For a moment, Jack debated calling anyone, to tell them what he was seeing. But who would believe him? People around here already thought he was a little odd because of his obsession with space. No, he needed proof. Grabbing his phone, he started recording through the telescope, capturing shaky footage of the mysterious craft as it continued its slow descent toward the hills. Across town, Emily Dawson was sitting at her aunt's kitchen table, staring blankly at her laptop screen. She'd come to Maplewood hoping to escape the chaos of Chicago and clear her head. As a journalist, she spent most days chasing stories, trying to make sense of the world's problems. But lately, everything felt stale, uninspired. She needed something fresh, something real. And so far, Maplewood hadn't delivered much excitement. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps approaching. Her cousin Rachel walked in holding 2 cups of coffee. "Still stuck?" Rachel asked, sliding one of the mugs toward Emily. "Yeah," Emily sighed, running a hand through her dark hair. "I don't know why I thought coming here would help. Nothing happens in this town." Rachel chuckled. "Well, you're not wrong about that, unless you count Mrs. Henderson's cat getting stuck in a tree last week. That was pretty thrilling," Emily laughed despite herself. "Thanks for reminding me how exciting my life is." Just then, her phone buzzed on the table. A notification popped up from the local news app. "Unexplained phenomenon reported near Maplewood Hills." Curious, she tapped on the article. It was short, barely more than a paragraph, mentioning reports of strange lights in the sky. Most likely it was nothing, a meteor shower or a prank, but something about it caught her attention. "I think I might have found my story," Emily said, standing up abruptly. "What are you talking about?" Rachel asked, confused. "Lights in the sky? Weird ones. I'm going to check it out." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "Are you serious? You're chasing UFOs now?" "I'm chasing a lead," Emily corrected with a grin. "And if it turns out to be aliens, I'll thank you for doubting me later." Jack was still outside when headlights appeared at the end of his driveway. He turned, squinting against the glare, and saw a car pull up. Out stepped Emily, looking slightly out of place in her jeans and leather jacket. She approached cautiously, holding up her hands in a gesture of peace. "Hi," she said, her voice calm but curious. "Sorry to bother you, but I heard about the lights. Are you the guy who saw them?" Jack hesitated for a moment, unsure whether to trust this stranger, but something about her demeanor put him at ease. "Yeah, that's me," he replied finally. "What's it to you?" "I'm a journalist," Emily explained. I'm staying in town for a bit and I'm looking into, well, whatever this is. Can I see what you've got? Reluctantly, Jack showed her the footage he'd taken. Emily watched intently, her eyes widening as she processed what she was seeing. This is incredible, she murmured. Do you mind if I tag along? If there's a chance we can get closer to this thing, I want to be there. Jack shrugged. Suit yourself, but don't say I didn't warn you if things get weird. Together, they loaded into Jack's beat-up truck and drove toward the hills. The road grew narrower and bumpier the farther they went, until they had to park and continue on foot. The forest was eerily quiet, the only sounds being the crunch of leaves underfoot and the occasional rustle of branches swaying in the breeze. Finally, they reached a clearing where the ground was scorched black as though something hot had touched down recently. In the center of the clearing lay the spacecraft, or at least what remained of it. Its surface gleamed faintly under the moonlight, and strange symbols etched into the dirt surrounded it like a protective barrier. Before either of them could react, the ship's door slid open with a hiss. Two figures emerged slowly, their movements deliberate and cautious. They were humanoid with slender builds and elongated limbs, but their skin shimmered like liquid metal. Their large almond-shaped eyes glowed faintly, studying Jack and Emily with an intensity that sent chills down their spines. Neither Jack nor Emily moved. They simply stared, too stunned to speak. One of the beings raised a hand, palm facing, outward, in what seemed like a gesture of peace. Then, without uttering a word, the pair retreated back into the ship, leaving behind only silence and unanswered questions. As they stood there trying to process what they'd just witnessed, Emily broke the spell. We need to tell someone, she said quietly. Who? Jack countered. You really think anyone's going to believe us? She didn't have an answer for that. Instead, she pulled out her phone and snapped a few photos of the scene before them. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain. Their lives and the lives of everyone in Maplewood were about to change forever. The next morning, the quiet town of Maplewood buzzed with whispers. News of the strange lights and the mysterious craft had spread quickly, fueled by Emily's hastily written article that went live on a local news website just hours after her encounter with Jack. People gathered in coffee shops, grocery stores, and gas stations sharing theories about what they thought might have happened. Some believed it was a secret government experiment gone wrong. Others insisted it was proof of alien life visiting Earth. A few even joked that it was all some elaborate prank to put Maplewood on the map. Jack woke up feeling uneasy. He hadn't slept much, his mind replaying the events of the previous night over and over again. The glowing figures, their silent gestures, the eerie symbols etched into the ground, it all felt surreal, like something out of a movie. But it wasn't fiction, it was real. And now everyone in town seemed to know about it. He glanced at his phone and saw several missed calls and texts from friends and neighbors asking if he'd really seen aliens. Sighing, he set the phone aside and decided to head into town for supplies. If this story got any bigger, he figured he'd need to stock up on essentials just in case things got chaotic. Meanwhile, Emily sat at her laptop in her aunt's house typing furiously. She knew she had stumbled onto something extraordinary, but she also knew she needed more evidence to back up her claims. Her article had generated interest, sure, but without concrete proof, skeptics would dismiss it as sensationalism. She needed answers, and fast. As luck would have it, help arrived sooner than expected. While scrolling through social media, Emily came across a post from Samantha Reed, a linguist based in Chicago who specialized in decoding ancient languages. Samantha had seen Emily's article and reached out, intrigued by the mention of symbols surrounding the crash site. If these symbols are part of an unknown language, Samantha wrote in a direct message, I might be able to help interpret them. Emily responded immediately, explaining everything she and Jack had witnessed. Within hours, Samantha agreed to travel to Maplewood to examine the scene herself. By mid-afternoon, she was pulling into town, her car packed with notebooks, cameras, and other equipment. When Samantha arrived at Jack's house, introductions were brief. There wasn't time for pleasantries, not when the world could be on the brink of first contact with extraterrestrial life. Jack filled her in on the details, showing her the shaky footage he'd recorded and describing the glowing figures in as much detail as he could remember. Samantha listened intently, nodding occasionally, but never interrupting. "I need to see the site," she said finally. "The symbols you mentioned, they're crucial. They might hold the key to understanding who or what we're dealing with." Together, the three of them drove back to the clearing. The scorched earth and the faint indentations left by the spacecraft were still visible, though the ship itself was nowhere to be found. Samantha knelt beside one of the symbols, studying it closely. It was intricate, composed of swirling lines and sharp angles that seemed to form a pattern. She took dozens of photos, jotting down notes in shorthand as she worked. "This is unlike anything I've ever seen," she admitted, excitement creeping into her voice. "But there's structure here, patterns. These aren't random scratches, they're deliberate." Jack crossed his arms, watching her carefully. "So what does it mean? Can you read it?" "Not yet," Samantha replied. "But give me time. I'll start piecing it together once we get back to your place. If we can decode even part of this, it could tell us why they're here, and whether they're friendly." Back in town, tensions began to rise. Word of the discovery reached higher. Authorities, and by late afternoon, military vehicles rolled into Maplewood. Soldiers in camouflage uniforms fanned out across the streets, setting up roadblocks and questioning residents. Captain Ryan Brooks, a stern man with sharp features and an authoritative demeanor, led the operation. His orders were clear: secure the area and contain the situation. For Jack, the presence of soldiers only added to his unease. He didn't trust the government, not after years of hearing conspiracy theories about cover-ups and secrecy. When he saw a group of soldiers heading toward his house, he quickly gathered his telescope, camera, and any other evidence he had collected. He stashed them in his truck, hoping to keep them safe until he could figure out what to do next. Captain Brooks showed up at Jack's door shortly afterward, flanked by two armed guards. "Mr. Taylor," he began, his tone clipped and formal. "We understand you were among the first to witness the unidentified object last night. We'd like to ask you a few questions." Jack hesitated, glancing past the captain to where Emily and Samantha stood nervously in the living room. "I already told my story to the press," he said cautiously. "What else do you want to know?" Brooks ignored the comment and stepped inside, surveying the room. His eyes landed on the stack of papers and photographs scattered across the table. "This material," he said, pointing to the items, "is classified. Hand it over." "No way," Jack shot back, instinctively stepping between the captain and the table. "You don't get to barge in here and take my stuff. This is private property." The tension in the room thickened. Brooks stared hard at Jack, clearly unaccustomed to being challenged. "Don't make this difficult," he warned. "We're here to protect you and ensure public safety." "Protect us from what?" Emily interjected, stepping forward. "From the truth or from yourselves?" Brooks turned his gaze to her, his expression unreadable. "Miss Dawson, I suggest you stay out of matters that don't concern you. This is a national security issue." Before anyone could respond, Samantha spoke up. "These symbols are important," she said firmly. "They may be our only chance to communicate with whoever or whatever is responsible for this. If you confiscate everything, you'll destroy any hope of understanding their intentions." Brooks considered her words for a moment, then signaled to his men. "Take the photographs and recordings," he ordered. "Leave the notes for now." With that, he turned and walked out, leaving behind a heavy silence. Later that evening, Jack, Emily, and Samantha regrouped in Jack's garage, which doubled as a makeshift workspace. Though frustrated by the military's interference, they refused to give up. Using the remaining materials and Samantha's expertise, they dove deeper into decoding the symbols. "It's slow going," Samantha admitted, rubbing her temples. "There's no Rosetta Stone for this language, but I'm starting to see connections. Certain patterns repeat almost like grammar rules." "What about meaning?" Emily asked. "Can you tell what they're saying?" "Not yet," Samantha replied, "but I think I can make an educated guess. Based on context, these symbols might represent concepts like peace, exploration, or survival. It's possible they're trying to send a message. As the hours passed, the trio worked tirelessly, fueled by coffee and determination. Outside, the hum of military vehicles echoed through the night, a constant reminder of the forces arrayed against them. Yet despite the pressure, they remained focused. For the first time since the encounter, they felt like they were making progress. By dawn, Samantha had managed to piece together fragments of meaning. One symbol appeared to signify refuge, while another resembled a depiction of stars or planets. Together they formed a sentence that hinted at a plea for help, or perhaps an offer of assistance. "We're close," Samantha whispered, exhaustion evident in her voice. "If we can crack the rest of this code, we might finally understand why they're here." Jack leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. "And then what? Even if we figure it out, how do we convince anyone to listen?" Emily smiled faintly. "That's the easy part," she said. "Once we have proof, the whole world will be watching." But deep down, none of them truly believed it would be that simple. The road ahead was fraught with challenges, not least of which was navigating the mistrust and fear that had already begun to take root in Maplewood. Still, they pressed on, driven by the hope that humanity and the mysterious visitors, aliens and humans alike, could find common ground. As the sun rose over the horizon, casting golden light across the sleepy town, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the edge of something monumental. Whether it would lead to cooperation or conflict remained to be seen. But one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. The days that followed were a blur of activity and tension. Maplewood, once a quiet town where nothing much happened, had become the center of attention, not just locally but across the country. News outlets sent reporters to cover the story, and conspiracy theorists flocked to the area, setting up makeshift camps on the outskirts of town. The military presence grew stronger, with soldiers patrolling the streets and roadblocks preventing anyone from getting too close to the crash site. For Jack, Emily, and Samantha, the pressure was mounting. Samantha spent most of her time hunched over her notes, trying to decode more of the symbols. She worked tirelessly, barely sleeping or eating, determined to unlock their meaning. Slowly, but surely she began piecing together fragments of the message. One symbol represented home, another loss, and yet another seemed to convey help. It was becoming clear that the aliens, whom they now referred to as the Veil, were communicating something deeply personal. They weren't here to conquer or harm. They were survivors, seeking refuge after losing their own world. Emily did her best to support Samantha while also keeping the public informed. Her articles gained traction online, drawing both praise and criticism. Some people applauded her efforts to uncover the truth, while others accused her of spreading fear or fabricating the story for fame. Despite the backlash, she remained committed to sharing what she knew. She believed that transparency was key. If humanity could understand the Veil's intentions, maybe they could avoid conflict. Jack, meanwhile, struggled with feelings of anger and helplessness. He hated how the military had taken control of the situation, confiscating evidence and shutting people out. Every time he saw Captain Brooks or his men, he felt a surge of frustration. Who were they to decide what information the public deserved? But there wasn't much he could do about it, at least not directly. Instead, he focused on helping Samantha and Emily however he could, whether it was running errands, keeping watch, or simply offering moral support. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jack decided to take a walk to clear his head. The air was cool and the streets were unusually quiet. Most residents stayed indoors now, wary of the soldiers and the growing unease in the town. As he wandered aimlessly, he noticed something strange, a faint glow coming from the direction of the hills. At first he thought it was just his imagination, but then he realized it was moving. Curiosity got the better of him, and he followed the light cautiously, staying hidden behind trees and bushes. After about 20 minutes, he arrived at a secluded spot near the crash site. There he saw one of the Veils standing beside a small device that emitted the soft green glow. The alien moved deliberately, adjusting knobs and buttons on the machine. Its movements were precise, almost ritualistic. Jack watched in silence, torn between fear and fascination. He wanted to run back and tell Emily and Samantha what he'd seen, but something stopped him. Maybe it was the way the veil seemed so focused, so intent on its task. Or maybe it was the realization that this moment, this glimpse into the unknown, was too important to interrupt. As he observed, the veil activated the device. A low hum filled the air, vibrating through the ground beneath Jack's feet. To his astonishment, the surrounding plants began to change. Leaves that had been wilted and brown suddenly turned green and vibrant. The soil, once dry and cracked, became moist and fertile. It was as if the machine was breathing life back into the earth. Jack's heart raced. This technology, it could change everything. If the veil were capable of repairing damaged ecosystems, imagine what it could mean for Earth. Humanity might finally have a chance to reverse the damage it had caused to the planet. But at the same time, he couldn't shake the feeling that such power would come with risks. What if people tried to exploit it? What if governments used it as a weapon? Realizing he couldn't keep this discovery to himself, Jack decided to act, quickly. He snapped a few photos with his phone, making sure to capture images of the device and its effects. Then, careful not to make any noise, he slipped away and headed back toward town. When Jack returned home, he found Emily and Samantha, waiting anxiously. "Where have you been?" Emily asked, her voice tinged with worry. "We've been calling you." "I found something," Jack said breathlessly, pulling out his phone. "You need to see this." He showed them the photos, explaining what he'd witnessed. Both women stared at the images in stunned silence. "This changes everything," Samantha murmured, her mind racing with possibilities. "If we can prove that the Veil are here to help, and that they have the means to heal our planet, we might be able to shift the narrative." "But how do we get the word out?" Emily asked. "The military is controlling the flow of information. They'll never let us publish anything that makes them look bad." "We don't give them a choice," Jack replied firmly. "We release it ourselves. You can write the article, Emily, and I'll upload the photos. Once it's online, there's no stopping it." Before they could finalize their plan, there was a knock at the door. Jack opened it to find Captain Brooks standing there, flanked by 2 soldiers. "Mr. Taylor," Brooks said curtly, "we need to speak with you, now." Jack exchanged a glance with Emily and Samantha before stepping outside. "What is it this time?" he asked, doing his best to sound calm. "We've received reports of unauthorized activity near the crash site," Brooks explained. "Care to tell me what you were doing out there?" "I was taking a walk," Jack lied, shrugging nonchalantly. "Is that illegal now?" Brooks narrowed his eyes. "Don't play games with me. Someone spotted you sneaking around. If you know something or if you found something, you're obligated to report it." Jack clenched his fists, resisting the urge to argue. "I don't know anything," he said evenly. "But even if I did, why should I trust you? All you've done is shut people out and spread fear." Brooks didn't respond immediately. Instead, he signaled to his men, who pushed past Jack and entered the house. They began searching the rooms, tossing aside furniture and rifling through papers. Emily and Samantha protested loudly, but the soldiers ignored them. "Stop!" Jack shouted, stepping forward. "You can't just barge in here." "This is a matter of national security," Brooks replied coldly. "Cooperate, and no one gets hurt." Despite their protests, the soldiers confiscated Samantha's notes, Emily's laptop, and Jack's phone. By the time they left, the trio was left feeling violated and defeated. Everything they had worked for, their research, their evidence, their hope, had been taken away in an instant. Despair hung heavy in the air as the 3 of them sat in silence, unsure of what to do next. Finally, Emily broke the quiet. "We can't give up," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "They may have taken our stuff, but they can't take the truth. We know what we saw, and we know what those symbols mean. That's all that matters." Samantha nodded, wiping tears from her eyes. "She's right. We still have the knowledge, and we still have each other. That's enough to start over." Jack sighed, rubbing his temples. "But how? Without proof, no one will believe us, and if we try to fight back, they'll only come down harder. Then we go bigger, Emily said firmly. We go public, not just locally, not just nationally, globally. If we can get the whole world talking about this, they won't be able to silence us. It was a risky plan, but it was all they had. Over the next few hours, they brainstormed ways to bypass the military's censorship. Using borrowed equipment and old-fashioned ingenuity, they managed to piece together a new presentation. Samantha summarized her findings in simple terms, focusing on the Veil's plea for help and their offer of advanced technology. Emily wrote a powerful article detailing their experiences and urging readers to demand transparency from their leaders. Jack recorded a video of himself recounting what he'd seen in the woods, including descriptions of the glowing device and its miraculous effects. By morning, they were ready. With the help of friends outside of town, they uploaded their content to multiple platforms simultaneously. Within hours, the story exploded. Social media lit up with hashtags like "Nar aliens and humans" and "Trust the Veil." News anchors debated the validity of their claims, and scientists weighed in on the potential implications of the Veil's technology. For the first time, the conversation shifted, from fear and mistrust to curiosity and hope. Captain Brooks and his team scrambled to contain the fallout, issuing statements and attempting to discredit the trio. But it was too late. The genie was out of the bottle, and there was no putting it back. As the days passed, the world began to divide. Some leaders embraced the idea of working with the Veil, seeing it as an opportunity to heal the planet and foster unity. Others remained skeptical, warning of the dangers of trusting an unknown species. Protests erupted in cities around the globe, with people demanding answers and action. In Maplewood, Jack, Emily, and Samantha watched it all unfold with a mix of pride and apprehension. They had ignited a global movement, but the outcome was far from certain. Would humanity rise to the occasion, or would fear and greed win out? For now, all they could do was wait and hope that their message of cooperation would prevail. The world was a whirlwind of opinions, emotions, and debates. The story of the Veil had spread like wildfire, igniting conversations in every corner of the globe. Governments held emergency meetings, scientists scrambled to analyze what little data they could gather, and ordinary people voiced their thoughts, some hopeful, others fearful, on social media and in protests. In Maplewood, Jack, Emily, and Samantha found themselves at the center of it all, their lives transformed by the choices they'd made. For days, the three of them stayed close, monitoring the reactions to their revelations. They received messages from strangers thanking them for sharing the truth, accusing them of lying, or simply asking questions about the Veil. Some supporters even traveled to Maplewood, hoping to catch a glimpse of the aliens or join the growing movement advocating for cooperation. But not everyone was supportive. Threats poured in too, angry voices demanding silence, accusing them of endangering humanity or worse. Captain Brooks and his team continued to monitor the situation closely, but their influence waned as public pressure mounted. People demanded transparency, refusing to accept vague statements or dismissive reassurances. Protesters gathered outside military bases, holding signs that read, "Peace, not fear," and "Aliens and humans together." The tide was turning, and the government had no choice but to listen. In the midst of this chaos, Samantha made a breakthrough. Using her memory and the scraps of notes she'd managed to save before the soldiers confiscated her work, she pieced together more of the Veil's message. It wasn't easy. She often worked late into the night, fueled by coffee and determination, but her efforts paid off. She discovered that the Veil weren't just seeking refuge, they were also offering help. Their technology, capable of repairing ecosystems, could be shared with humanity, but only if humans proved they were ready to use it responsibly. "This is huge," Samantha said one evening, her voice trembling with excitement as she explained her findings to Jack and Emily. "They're giving us a chance to fix our mistakes, but they're watching us. They want to see if we're worthy." Emily nodded thoughtfully. It makes sense. If they've been through something catastrophic, they wouldn't trust just anyone with their knowledge. They need to know we won't destroy ourselves or them all over again. Jack leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. So how do we prove we're worthy? What does that even look like? Samantha hesitated, then shrugged. I think it starts with showing them we can work together, not just among ourselves, but with them too. Trust has to go both ways. Determined to take action, the trio decided to reach out to the Veil directly. They didn't have much to offer, no advanced equipment or official credentials, but they hoped their sincerity would be enough. Armed with Samantha's translations and a message of peace written in simple terms, they returned to the crash site under cover of darkness. The military presence was lighter than before, likely due to the shifting political landscape. But they still moved cautiously, avoiding patrols and keeping watch for any signs of trouble. When they arrived at the clearing, they found one of the Veil waiting for them. Its shimmering form stood tall and still, its glowing eyes fixed on them with an intensity that sent shivers down their spines. For a moment, none of them spoke, unsure how to begin. Finally, Emily stepped forward, holding up a sheet of paper covered in symbols and English words. We understand, she said slowly, pointing to the paper. You came here because you lost your home. You need help. We want to help. The Veil tilted its head slightly, studying the paper. Then, it raised a hand and traced a symbol in the air, a gesture Samantha recognized as meaning truth. Hope flickered in her chest. We know you have technology, Jack added, gesturing toward the ground where the device had been. We saw what it can do. We don't want to take it from you. We just want to learn, to work together. The alien paused, then reached out and touched the paper gently. A soft hum filled the air, and the symbols on the page began to glow faintly. It was a response, a sign that communication was possible. Over the next few weeks, relationships between humans and the Veil slowly began to improve. Guided by Samantha's translations, small groups of scientists and diplomats met with the aliens to discuss potential collaborations. The Veil agreed to share limited access to their technology, starting with projects aimed at restoring damaged environments. In return, humanity promised to protect the Veil as they rebuilt their population. Not everyone supported the partnership. Skeptics argued that trusting the Veil was reckless, while others worried that relying on alien technology would weaken human innovation. But the majority of people embraced the opportunity, seeing it as a chance to heal the planet and build bridges across species. In Maplewood, life slowly returned to normal, or as normal as it could be under the circumstances. Jack went back to fixing cars, though he spent his free time helping organize community events focused on environmental restoration. Emily continued writing, documenting the unfolding story of humans and the Veil for future generations. And Samantha dedicated herself to learning more about the Veil's language, determined to deepen understanding between the two species. Months later, the first joint project between humans and the Veil launched successfully. A barren stretch of land near Maplewood, once stripped of life by pollution and deforestation, began to flourish again thanks to the Veil's technology. Trees sprouted where none had grown in decades, rivers ran clear, and wildlife returned. It was proof that cooperation could yield incredible results. As Jack stood at the edge of the newly restored forest, watching birds flit between branches, he felt a sense of pride and hope. Humanity had taken its first steps toward a brighter future, one built on trust and mutual respect. Emily joined him a moment later, snapping photos of the scene for her latest article. This is going to change everything, she said softly, smiling. People will see what's possible when we work together. Yeah, Jack replied, gazing out at the vibrant landscape. But it's just the beginning. There's still so much to figure out. Samantha approached them, carrying a notebook filled with new translations. And we'll keep figuring it out, she said firmly. One step at a time. Together they walked deeper into the forest, surrounded by the sounds of life returning to the land. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would always be challenges, misunderstandings, and moments of doubt. But for the first time in a long time, humanity had a reason to believe in something greater than itself. As the sun set behind the trees, casting golden light over the thriving ecosystem, Jack couldn't help but smile. Aliens and humans, it wasn't perfect, but it was a start. and sometimes that was all you needed. The months rolled by, and the partnership between humans and the Veil grew stronger. What had started as cautious cooperation turned into a fragile but hopeful alliance. The success of the environmental restoration project near Maplewood inspired similar efforts worldwide. Deserts began blooming with greenery, polluted rivers ran clean again, and cities adopted sustainable practices using technology adapted from the Veil's designs. It was a new era, one where humans learned to live not just alongside nature, but also alongside an alien species. But progress wasn't without its challenges. Not everyone embraced the changes brought about by the Veil's presence. Some groups saw the aliens as invaders even if their intentions were peaceful. Protests erupted in major cities, with people holding signs that read "Earth for Humans" or "No Alien Control." Conspiracy theories spread like wildfire online, claiming that the Veil were secretly plotting to take over the planet. Others feared that humanity's reliance on alien technology would weaken its ability to solve problems independently. In Maplewood, Jack, Emily, and Samantha felt the weight of these tensions daily. While they had become local heroes to many, they were also targets for criticism and suspicion. People either praised them for their role in bridging the gap between humans and the Veil, or accused them of selling out to an unknown species. Despite the backlash, the trio remained committed to their mission. They knew the path forward wouldn't be easy, but giving up wasn't an option. One evening, after another long day of meetings and community outreach, the three friends gathered at Jack's garage-turned-workshop. The space had become their unofficial headquarters, cluttered with notes, maps, and tools left over from various projects. Samantha sat hunched over her laptop, typing furiously as she worked on translating more of the Veil's language. Emily flipped through a stack of articles she'd written recently, making edits and jotting down ideas for future pieces. Jack tinkered with a broken piece of machinery, his hands oil-stained and focused. "We're running out of time," Samantha said suddenly, breaking the quiet hum of activity. Her voice carried a note of urgency that made both Jack and Emily look up. "What do you mean?" Emily asked, setting her papers aside. Samantha sighed, rubbing her temples. "I've been going over some of the symbols I decoded earlier. There's something I missed before, something important. The Veil aren't staying forever. Their ship isn't just a vessel, it's repairing itself. Once it's ready, they'll leave." Jack froze, the wrench in his hand clattering to the floor. "Leave? But what happens to all the work we've done together? What happens to us?" "They didn't come here to stay," Samantha explained gently. "They came because they needed help, and because they believed we could change, but they can't wait around forever. If we want this partnership to last, we need to prove we can handle things on our own." Emily frowned, leaning forward. "So what are you saying? That we have to show them we're ready to stand on our own 2 feet?" "Exactly," Samantha replied. "We've got maybe 6 months before their ship is fully operational. After that, it's up to us to keep moving forward without them." The room fell silent as the gravity of her words sank in. For all their progress, humanity still depended heavily on the Veil's guidance and technology. Without them, would people revert to old habits? Or could they rise to the occasion? Determined to make the most of the time they had left, the trio devised a plan. They decided to focus on education and empowerment, teaching communities how to use the Veil's methods sustainably. Samantha translated key instructions into simple terms anyone could understand, creating guides that combined images, symbols, and step-by-step directions. Emily used her platform as a journalist to share stories of successful projects, highlighting the impact of human effort rather than alien intervention. And Jack traveled to nearby towns, offering workshops on practical skills like building eco-friendly tools and maintaining restored ecosystems. Their efforts paid off. Slowly but surely, people began taking ownership of the changes happening around them. Farmers learned how to grow crops without depleting the soil. Engineers adapted the Veil's designs to create renewable energy systems. Even children got involved, planting trees and learning about conservation in school programs inspired by the Veil's example. Despite their successes, skepticism lingered. In Washington, D.C., Lawmakers debated whether to continue funding the joint initiatives or cut ties entirely. Corporations lobbied against adopting sustainable practices, arguing that profits would suffer, and fringe groups continued to stir fear, spreading misinformation about the Veil's true motives. Through it all, Jack, Emily, and Samantha stayed focused. They knew that winning hearts and minds wouldn't happen overnight, but every small victory mattered. As the deadline approached, the Veil called a meeting with representatives from around the world. The gathering took place in a massive tent erected near the crash site, symbolizing the shared ground between humans and aliens. Inside, the air buzzed with anticipation as leaders, scientists, activists, and ordinary citizens gathered to hear what the Veil had to say. One of the aliens stepped forward, its glowing eyes scanning the crowd. Through Samantha's translations, it delivered a message that resonated deeply. You have shown courage and determination. You have begun to heal your world, not because we forced you, but because you chose to act. This is your journey now. We will depart soon, but the lessons we leave behind belong to you. The room erupted in applause, though tears flowed freely among those who had grown close to the Veil. Jack, Emily, and Samantha exchanged bittersweet smiles, knowing the moment they dreaded was finally here. When the Veil's ship lifted off, weeks later, it did so under a sky filled with fireworks and cheers. Thousands of people gathered to watch as the sleek craft ascended into the heavens, leaving behind a legacy of hope and transformation. Though the aliens were gone, their influence remained, a reminder that cooperation and trust could bridge even the widest gaps. In the months that followed, humanity faced new challenges. Old habits sometimes resurfaced and disagreements arose over how best to move forward. But the lessons learned during the Veil's stay endured. Communities continued working together, driven by the belief that they could build a better future, not just for themselves but for generations to come. Jack returned to fixing cars, though he often volunteered his skills to maintain equipment used in restoration projects. Emily wrote a book chronicling the events of the past year, titled Aliens and Humans, A Shared Journey. It became a bestseller, inspiring readers worldwide, and Samantha dedicated herself to preserving the Veil's language, ensuring their story would never be forgotten. Though the Veil were far away, their presence lingered in the hearts and minds of those they'd touched. Humanity had taken its first steps toward a brighter tomorrow, and thanks to the bond forged between aliens and humans, anything seemed possible.